Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for another edition of Let's Argue, where I go online, I take your hot takes, your unpopular opinions, and your tough questions. I respond to the best ones, and yeah, that is what we do. Let's go. Whole Lotta Red can legitimately change the rap game for the better with such a unique style and voice being hyped up to this degree. Many rappers will be inspired and experiment more with their sound and take risks they otherwise would have never thought of doing. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to Whole Lotta Red. I think it has the potential to be a pretty good album, even with Cardi's last major single being a serious dud. Having said that, I mean, Cardi isn't doing too much more other than, grabbing this super minimal, subtly psychedelic brand of trap music and really hyping things up with these wild vocal inflections. But it's not like he's the only person doing adventurous things vocally in hip-hop, in trap right now. I mean, is he even on the same level of virtuosity and personality, even though Cardi is, definitely a standout artist in my view? Is he even on the level of a Young Thug? I mean, in my opinion, not really. While I do respect, Die Lit as a very aesthetically consistent and interesting album, I think Thugger does a lot more interesting stuff vocally much of the time than Cardi does. The flip side of this is that so many people are paying attention to this drop and are awaiting it that potentially it won't live up to the hype. There is also that kind of side of the coin that could result from the release of this album, not just it being heavily influential and everyone taking from it. It just might not live up to expectations as well. And Unkindness 10 Years was the best album of the year so far, and I'm upset you didn't review it. I know Adam's your friend and all, but I think more people should be listening to it. Every song is super catchy and the mixing is pretty great as well. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I'm just buddies with Adam, and I've had a lot of personal conversations with Adam, and I've hung out with him a few times, and I just think he's a great guy, and he's actually one of my favorite content creators too. I personally would just feel like I would just have a hard time trying to objectively review a record of his. Having said that, I think the musicality of the record is pretty solid. I'm enjoying the way that he kind of, embodies a really solid appreciation of the Bright Eyes catalog, stuff like that. And look, I mean, as much as I am connected to Adam on a friend type level, I wouldn't be against having like a conversation, or like an interview or something with him at some point about his music and the record in general. I think that would be pretty fitting and fine, given that I think the album is certainly worth talking about and sharing. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Here's a fire take. It wasn't a big deal. Millie Vanilli lip-synced. The producer also created Boney M, which featured a dude who never sang a note, and there was no outcry. Still shouldn't have beaten Nina Cherry for Best New Artist, though. The thing with Millie Vanilli, though, is that they weren't just lip-syncing. The problem was that they weren't, like, singing, on the tracks. So, yeah, they're not just sort of, on stage, it's not their actual vocals on the stage, in the recording. It's not them singing. At the very least, when you're going to see someone perform or you're going to see an artist play live, even if they do lip sync a little bit or there's a backing track or something like that, you actually want to see the person whose vocals are on the song. There's kind of a huge level of deception going on there. I think more than some people are willing to buy into. And mind you, lip syncing is not like, a new thing or a big deal. If you go back to a lot of those 1950s, 1960s, like, singer or mop top type band performances on talk shows and various music shows, yeah, they were just like pantomiming, playing and lip syncing. It's not actually a vocal, real live performance going on there in many cases. So, it's not just the lip syncing that's the issue. It's the fact that it's not the actual singer. It's impossible to listen to Led Zeppelin anymore without feeling guilty for all the artists they stole from, most being black. Maybe to a degree. I mean, look, Led Zeppelin is most definitely guilty of plagiarism, cultural appropriation as well, but it was really no secret that they were like a bunch of white guys from England doing blues rock, kind of doing their own harder version of that. And, I think even outside of the Led Zeppelin context, most writing and, creation in the music world, you are borrowing from somewhere. You are ripping something off at least a little bit in order to get done what you're trying to get done. Not to say that you're not making a case here. I mean, again, Led Zeppelin, plagiarism, it's a thing. But when I listen to and I think of Led Zeppelin, my mind goes more to the questionable relationships and connections that the band had with some of its fans, like the younger ones. I mean, Jimmy Page was like dating a frickin' young teenage girl at one point. That's pretty weird. There aren't enough guitar solos in music anymore, specifically pop music. We as people demand more kick-ass solos. Yeah. Well, honestly, it's not just guitar solos that sort of seem to be going out to pasture right now, with streaming really taking the pop formula down to its most, I guess, skeletal and basic in this current age. I think we're kind of losing solos in general. We're losing bridges a lot of the time. We're lucky if on some tracks you get an intro. A lot of songs that drop these days that are around that like 2-minute realm, you have verse, no intro, verse. Sometimes you even start with the chorus or some version of it. But verse, chorus, verse, chorus, trails off a little bit at the end, dunzo. So while, I guess I understand your passion and your sentiment here, we're losing a lot more than just the solo, people. 1,000 GEEKS is way too many GEEKS. Have you seen how many GEEKS that, you can go through in a week? 1,000 GEEKS is not that many GEEKS. People are struggling out here during the pandemic, having a hard time getting a hold of GEEKS. I know toward the beginning of the pandemic, Congress passed a bill and gave people, one single sum of GEEKS, and about 95% of people have now run out of those GEEKS. It hasn't even been a year. People will go through 1,000 GEEKS in a very short period of time, especially if you're talking about the social conditions that we're living under currently. So 1,000 GEEKS is really not that much. If things are to continue down the road that they are right now, and we're to expect people to be able to protect themselves and keep themselves safe during this time, every year we're going to need at least 5,000 GEEKS each. Each person will need at the very least, 5,000 whole GEEKS. Tarzan soundtrack is one of the best Disney soundtracks. Every single Phil Collins song in that movie slaps. I mean, sure, if you think that, you're allowed to, but I mean, Phil Collins, Tarzan, it's kind of B tier, in the grander Disney like animation film landscape. I mean, it's if you're talking about like real heat, I mean you've got to be talking about Aladdin. You've got to be talking about frickin' Lion King. You've got to be talking about Little Mermaid. Come on. Everyone needs to stop classifying things as hyperpop because the genre was made up by Spotify and too many artists hate it. It's just SoundCloud music being siphoned into Spotify playlists to profit off of small artists. Yeah, I mean, that's probably true to a degree, but look, I mean, all genre names are like made up, and a lot of artists that end up getting labeled with genres hate the genre label or what it represents or what it ends up being. You call a lot of artists that land in that style bubblegum bass and stuff. At the end of the day, regardless of if the label came down from on high in a Spotify boardroom, it's still kind of accurate. Don't Stop Believin' is a technically perfect pop song. Every element of the song is crafted to maximize its delicious catchiness and anthemic sing-along qualities. Being overplayed doesn't make it bad. I don't see what the last portion there had to do with your argument, but I do agree. The song being played very heavily, it's in heavy rotation, doesn't make it bad. That being said, I do think he makes a compelling case here. And look, this is not to say that Don't Stop Believin' is the greatest song of all time, everybody has to like it, so on and so forth. I mean, in terms of what we understand in the abstract as the pop formula and what makes for a compelling piece of pop music. I think that Don't Stop Believin' is like pretty meticulously assembled, and I can't really think of anything in terms of its composition, its aesthetics, or its performance that I would really like to be any better. And I think the fact that the track has kind of transcended generationally so deeply and is so beloved by people young and old, it's so goddamn sing-alongable. I think that speaks to its pop perfection. Now, again, that does not mean greatest song ever, best song of all time. I think there are actually a lot of songs out there that have kind of hit the perfect pop formula. It's not really I think a matter of being the best necessarily as much as you're really kind of like checking all these necessary boxes for a track to hit an average listener in a certain way.